Yeah, Mr. Joe Dyson, we're doing this for the first time here. Where are you this morning anyway?
At the moment, I'm in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And,
Are you able to operate a little there during this period, or what's going on?
well, at the moment, everything is at a halt up here. Most of my performances have been canceled, as many other musicians at this point. However, I have done a few things online using actually this platform Zoom. I did a master class, like a lecture master class
Right.
recently for a program called Take Me to the River through the New School of Music, Jazz and Contemporary Music. And then I also did another like phone conversation with someone else. And, it's been, a different way of but it's cool nonetheless.
What about your students at Tulane? Are you able to reach them?
I've actually once my daughter was born last October, so I
Oh,
actually had to take a leave of just basically take a leave.
from that.
Um, I've been up here. I had another guy to take over for me, Peter. Peter Varnado.
Oh, yeah, I know, Peter.
But I still keep in touch with some of the students,
Uh-huh.
and it's been cool.
So you'll go back to that then when circumstances permit you to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how the very early days of Joe Dyson. You're a New Orleans native. Where'd you grow up, and what neighborhood?
So I grew up uptown New Orleans, in the Carrollton area. That's the 17th Ward district,
Yeah.
and my my earliest memories of music started with my family. Um, my father is a organist as well as a bassist. My grandmother also sings, and I have a few aunts. I have my aunt that sings, as well as my uncle that plays drums, and a slew of cousins that play. I have two aunts that sing on both sides of the family. Um, and yeah, I grew up watching other guys in the neighborhood play. The Baptiste family, Dave, I think his name is David Baptiste.
Right.
Uh, he lived like a few blocks down from me. Ellis Marcellus actually lived right off of Hickory. So I just remember walking in the neighborhood and seeing a few guys, um, and seeing brass bands, seeing I remember that the Carrollton Hunters from the Mardi Gras Indian tribe, they would come. You would see them usually on St. Joseph night, coming up Carrollton. So I mean, I had a really great childhood, and also seeing other stuff from Central City, like from the churches. I grew up in a church as well, and seeing a lot of different choirs and organists and drummers. I mean, all walks of life. It's been I had a really great time growing up in New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, your dad was an organist and bass player. Was that mostly in church, or was he involved in other kinds of music?
Mostly in church. He actually, my grandmother tells a story that he actually was the one of the first house bassists for the gospel tent at the Jazz Fest, and he used to play with like a lot of like the quartet groups, gospel quartet groups that would come along, and he was a really great organist. He played for many churches around the city, and I remember actually being with him a lot of those times on Sunday mornings, or sometimes at a choir rehearsal. I would sit with him, and yeah, just was always amazed at the ability that he had.
Uh, were you drawn yourself to try your hand at something early, Joe?
Oh,
At
absolutely,
musically speaking.
absolutely. I think some of my earliest memories, my father, when he would actually play at church, I would sit next to him on the organ, and he'd let me tap some of the keys, and there'd be times where they'd ask him to give a rendition of a song right before the sermon was being spoken, and he would sing, and I would have to sing along with him. Like the song was, when praises go up, God's blessings come down. So I would I would have to like repeat what he had said or like remember like the a verse, and then I'd have to sing the verse right after him, and maybe press a note or something like that on the organ. And then I also remember like wanting to emulate my uncles that played drums. I'd sit behind them patiently waiting to play. I'd have like my sticks or my makeshift sticks at the time, my hanger, the bottom of the hangers.
All right, right. The wire stick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A stick, actual branches or something like that, playing on the Bible. And then after church, it was either after church or maybe like the last song of church, I'd be able to come in and like sit in on the drums and play like the last tune, and that would eventually grow into letting me be more part of the service.
So it was through your uncles that you found out about drums, or somewhat got a little bit of opportunity to start messing around with them a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, through my father and my uncles. Yep.
Uh, well, did you guys have instruments at home? Did you have a piano or a keyboard in the house?
No. So my mom, she also tells a story that when she would cook in the kitchen, I would also be near her, and I would always, I used to apparently like to hide out in the cabinets.
I know that place. I know that space.
Yeah, right. So I would, as she would be cooking, I'd be hiding out in the cabinets, and then come out with pots and pans, and also be playing on the pans. And I think that my mom was probably one of the first to say, I think little Joe likes to play drums.
This
And
man is a drummer. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Lionel Hampton told me same thing. He started like that. He's growing up in Montgomery, and his living in his grandma's house, and it was a pots and pans in the kitchen kid, man, starting on drums.
Wow. Yeah,
So
no, I mean, I'm sure there's so many similar stories. I mean, when you have when you're drawn to something like that, you can't help it.
right. Well, did you actually begin to play drums then? How old were you when you actually kind of began formally to try to play, would you say?
Um, well, I think I became basically the house drummer for our church, the main drummer for our church. We had an unfortunate incident in our family where one of the uncles that would play drums, he was a young kid at the time. I think he was probably about 10, maybe 10 or 11. Him and his twin sister and my grandfather at the time, they were actually trapped in a house fire.
Oh,
And yeah, the family was devastated. He was the pastor at the time, and my father was playing organ. He would come back and forth because he was playing at different churches. And after the house fire, my father had to assume the position of pastor, and my oldest uncle, who was also playing drums at the time, he was working on ships at the time, so he was always gone. So I was one of the guys that basically had, at a young age, I stepped in and started playing drums, and that had to be around the age of 5, I want to say. um, and I was always excited to come in and play, and just just be there and learn as much as possible. It's basically trial by error.
yeah.
Trial by
Harlan,
fire, I should say.
Harlan Riley told me that he started about the same way, the same age. He said, but when he got a little older, it's like James Brown was starting to hit on the radio, and he'd slide a little of that James Brown stuff in his church drum, and his grandfather would look over at him, shake his finger.
Yeah, that's
None
right.
of that in here, boy.
Yep.
Did you experience any of that?
Oh yeah, there would be plenty of times where my grandmother, I mean my father or my grandmother, they would always, like say, play it straight. They'd always like, say play it straight, don't, nothing extra, play it straight.
Well, as you started getting more chances to play, Joe, did you like it? Were you loving it? Has this become one of your primary passions pretty quickly?
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. My when I got to elementary school, I started pursuing, playing with the school bands. There was also a school choir. That was a funny story actually. So I went to creative arts elementary school, creative arts magnet school, McDonough 15,
Mhm.
and there were several programs that you can actually join. music wise that was at the school. So there was a program called the Wake Up Singers, which my first grade teacher was the director over. Uh, and then there was also the marching band, and within the marching band you get the jazz band, and then there was the choir and all this other stuff. So I was in the Wake Up Singers with because of my first grade teacher, and I was also trying to get into the marching band. And my band director at the time, everybody had to take music classes, even if he wasn't in the band. And I think it was after school one day my mother had came, and somehow all of the teachers was just in this one area. So my first grade teacher was talking to the band director, Jerry McGowan at the time, and they were saying like, oh, little Joe has, a good talent, and, he should be doing more, and, maybe he can join these programs. And my mom was saying, well, oh, I wanted to play trombone. That's what it was. I wanted to learn how to play trombone. And my band director was telling my mom how much the rental instruments were. And Miss Moses was saying, well, Joe sings, but he also plays drums he's trying to play drums in the choir. And my mom was saying, well, Joe plays drums at church all the time. So this is why. And then that completely changed everything. Mr. McGowan basically said, you won't play horn anymore, you'll play drums. And Miss Moses said, you will play drums and you will continue to sing in this program. And, it basically, that's when I learned formal training, learned how to read music, learning technique. And, I always loved it because I was also around other peers who were my age or maybe a little bit older, who I can also learn and engage with. And there was a lot of great talent at that school. Chris Royal was one of the students there. Trombone Shorty, Troy Andrews, he was one of the students there. And there's one of my good friends, Edward Jackson. He was one of the students that he was actually my peer in the same grade. He's he's heavy on the brass band scene at the moment. He's started the TVC brass band, and he also played with Hot 8 brass band, who played with Lauryn Hill and all these other people. And he played with Hot 8 brass band. He's all over. But yeah, no, it was just so many, so much young talent who came through that program.
Yeah, you also got involved with the Satchmo Louis Armstrong School of Music too in the summers, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right, actually. So right before this Satchmo program, my band director gave a summer program called I think it was called Project Prodigy, or it might have been called Prodigy Project. Actually, I always forget the order. But yeah, at that program, we started to get fully enriched into the fundamentals of music, reading and going through the rudimentary tradition for drums, and also learning about string instruments, and also creating a large orchestration, reading, combining all of this at one time. And I did that program for several years, maybe about 2 or 3 years. And I remember my band director, he would have to step out of class at moments, and he would let me take over the class and play. And the director of the program, Joe Salisbury, basically took a liking to me, and he saw me doing a lot throughout the program. And he was also working with the Louis Armstrong Jazz Camp program, and he basically asked me if I would like to come into the next program, because the Prodigy Project was first, and literally the next week was Jazz Camp.
Oh, yeah.
for the next 3 weeks. So they allowed me to come into the program a little bit early, and I was able to get a scholarship, and I was able to meet all of these great people. That's the first time I met Elvin Baptiste, the first time I met Clyde Curry, the first time I met Edward Kidd Jordan, the first time I met Marlon Jordan, Kent Jordan, like the Jordan family, of course. Right. And Jonathan Bloom, who was a great instructor,
great
Herman
educator.
Jackson. Yeah, Herman Jackson, Herlin Raleigh, and then also that was the first time I met Donald Harrison,
who turned out to be a very, very important person in your life, and generally speaking, and certainly musically speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where did you meet? Was it at the camp? Was he brought in as an adjunct, or was he working with the camp at that time, Donald?
Yeah, so Herlin Riley and Donald Harrison, they were both artists in residence at the year that I actually joined the program. So I would see Herlin every day in the drum classes in the morning times, and then Donald, I actually met him by, it was just like the stars were aligned or something like that. I was in the one of the classrooms practicing because there was something that was introduced to me, a concept that I wasn't familiar with. I mean, playing jazz had been different. I only played music from a folkloric place, stuff that I heard or seen,
Right.
and then I would just play that. And being introduced to these new ideas about different drummers, like Elvin Baptiste or Clyde Credit will always say, like, play like Smokey Johnson or
Right.
James Black, or Elvin Elvin Jones or something
Elvin
like that.
Jones, right? Max Roach, somebody
I'm
like
like
that.
a kid and I don't know who these people are, but I'm doing my best. So I was in the practice room trying to practice, and Donald basically walked in. He was just walking around and looked in the class, and he saw this little kid in the room by himself playing drums, and he's just like, it's lunchtime, people outside playing basketball and running around and doing all the type of stuff. What are you doing in this room by yourself? And I was just like, just trying to practice. And luckily there were 2 drum sets set up. So he sat down at the kit with me, and he, went through the same thing. He started playing and asked me, have you ever heard of Art Blakey? Have you ever heard of Roy Haynes? Have you ever heard of Max Roach, or, any of these guys? And all of my answers were like, no. So he started playing and basically would, spoon feed me some ideas to see if I can catch on. And as I was grasping them, you can see that he was pleased and he was very happy with what was happening. And he would always say, like, you're gonna be all right. I'm gonna look out for you, and I'm gonna be looking forward to you. So that was all what I remember him saying. And after the program, I was in several other things happening in the city with other young students, and sometimes out of nowhere Donald would just peer in, and I'd be like, oh, that's the man from the camp. And he'd say, oh, like, that's the little kid from from the camp. And he'd always, like, be really encouraging. And of course later on I got to start really working with him in the city around town, playing and being in his program, also at the Tipitinas Foundation with the Tipitinas interns, and then working with him in the city, and finally started touring with him my senior year of high school. I was able to go. I went to Chicago with him, and that's actually where I met. Our first gig with him was with Dr. John. We opened up for Dr. John, and meeting other guys. I mean, it was just, I can go on and on and on about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and Donald told me that when he was a tiny kid, he was always drumming in the crib, and his mother said, "No, this kid should be a drummer." Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he's had a real facility for remembering drum pattern and particular drumming styles.
oh absolutely. Donald is an encyclopedia when it comes to music. Like, he can tell you the exact sticking of what Art Blakey was doing throughout each period, and what songs and why he was doing it, because he also has like a really brilliant mind to ask the right questions.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
a great educator, respectively, of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and he can do that with each drummer, and not just drummers, with any instrument. He knows about the bass. He knows about piano. He knows about what trumpet players are doing. He knows what string instruments are doing. I mean, just really brilliant.
Yeah, he's and a dedicated advocate for New Orleans culture writ large.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the first time I saw you, Joe, it was with Donald. I think it was a Satchmo Summerfest. They used to have the club strut and play some outdoor stages on Frenchman Street.
That's right.
And it was you and Conun and Max were in Donald's quartet. First time I thought, who are these children? You were about 15 maybe, but you looked young, a little younger than you were. And the other two guys had real youthful looking too. But what a great trio, which became a trio that
Yeah.
of those guys. Was that all? It was all out at Noka that you got with those guys, or how did that all come together?
So I actually met Conun at the Louis Ashmore Armstrong Jazz Camp, and we were kids, probably about 10 years old, 10 or 11. I want to say 10 years old. And Max, I met Max through Chris Royal. Chris Royal, I used to play with Chris every summer. We used to do gigs at the Funky Butt, and we did gigs at the Fine Arts Center, and we just play around town, any type of thing that he had. And this one occasion that he put a group together for one of the early concerts at Essence Fest that was at the convention center in the daytime. There was a young artist who I guess was under artist development. He was the brother to Omarion. His name was Orion, and he needed I guess he needed a rhythm section, and he also needed an opening act for that band. So Chris Royal put a group together, which was which was Max on bass, Josh Connolly. That was the first time I met him. He's a great guitarist who played with Big Sam, and he's also the guitarist in Troy Andrews' band, Shorty's band, and played with like a bunch of other national touring acts, R&B acts. And Conun was playing keys. So we're on stage, and we're playing, we're counting off the tune, and Max was late because it was heavy security, all this type of stuff. People wouldn't let you in, and literally before we count off the tune, Max walks on the stage with his bass, plugs in, and the first tune is So What. So I didn't really get to speak with Max before we played. He plays the melody to So What, and like he's so fluid and he's funky and got great feel, and I was just like, man, who is this guy? I mean, it's literally like we fell in love with each other's sound, like just instantly playing. And then after the set, I was just like, man, I would really love to, to play with you guys. I'm getting ready to go to Noka this coming year for August, and I really want to play with y'all, start a band or something like that. And we had basically became a working rhythm section starting that year. We played around. I mean, we played in school, but we also was being hired to play around the town. And that basically happened up until our senior year. And our senior year was interesting because we started working with Elvin Baptiste. Mr. Bat had a gig in California where he was doing a masterclass in a show itself. Can't remember the actual town or the college. I just remember we went out there to play. And we had to each of us had missed our individual slots to give our senior recital. So in order to make up for it, we decided to make one combined show where we would give our senior recital, we would all contribute to it. And then that was the actual moment where we named the aggregation of what we were. We call it the Bridge Trio. And we basically started working as a working trio ever since that moment. So,
you guys have recorded. Are you still playing some gigs?
We're at about 36.5 minutes, Fred. Just like
okay. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
So,
Joe, the Bridge Trio still a happening thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have music that we're still trying to release at the moment, and we're consistently working on new material and new performances.
Yeah.
We have some stuff coming up. I mean, well, hopefully we had some stuff coming up.
Right. Who knows now, right?
Yeah, who knows?
Well, that's been a consistently good outlet for you and the other two guys as composers.
Oh, absolutely. Those guys, we all push each other. I mean, Conun, in my opinion, he's the most prolific composer out of all of us. He's been writing for a long time and producing for a long time. And Max, he was like a roommate of mine in college, and so I saw like the stuff that he was writing and the stuff that he was getting at, and he has such a creative concept for writing. He knows a lot of different music, and he's always putting his ear to it. And those guys pushed me to, to write more. I mean, I had my ideas, but I was also limiting myself at the time, thinking, oh, I'm just a drummer. And they were saying, no, you're more than that. You have these ideas. You're always humming or singing something. So, they basically pushed me to write more. And it's a great circle of friends and a great circle of creative minds just coming together to write.
Yeah, that's been a good base, and now you've got a quintet I see that plays some. You're also doing a lot of work with other people coming up. Donny McCaslin.
Oh yeah,
Donny McCaslin rather. And who's the young trumpet player? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Gibbeton Gellin or
Gibbeton Gellin. Yes.
Gibbeton Gellin.
Yeah, he actually has a project that recently, I think that was just released today, called True Design. He's a young trumpeter who came on the scene here in New York, and he became also like a protege of Roy Hargrove, and has a really beautiful sound. He's from I think he's from Haiti, and just really beautiful sound, really really creative. He has beautiful melodies. The stuff that he writes. I was doing some gigs with him in the city, and I also asked him, for some of my live performances up here, if he could join me, and he has, and really, just it's really a great time to play with him. With Donny McCaslin, I actually just did a tour with him recently. I met him before the tour. I met him in Alat, Israel, at the Red Sea Jazz Festival, and we got a chance to play with each other at one of the jam sessions, and kept in touch. And he asked me to do the tour with him, and we had a really great time. It's actually trio with his bassist, great bassist, Desron Douglas, who's like another big brother of mine who took me around. So, we have really great stuff happening.
Yeah, you've got dates coming up with Pat Metheny also, I see.
Yeah. So I met Pat. Pat he's like one of those guys. He sent me an email. It was just like, hey, man, I'm really a big fan of yours. And I've been watching you. I've come to some of your gigs and really would like to play with you. And I was really taken back by it. So he would have me come to his house, and we just play tunes and just kind of hang out, and we talk. And he sent me some dates and said, hey man, I would like to see if you would like to play with me. I have some stuff coming up, and I really would like you to be a part of it. And of course, I can't turn that down. He's a masterful player and masterful composer.
Yeah, really written.
Yeah, I'm always interested in being under apprenticing under a great artistry like that. So I accepted some of those dates. We're not sure if it's actually going to happen at the moment, but there's the management have sent some other dates too for the next coming year. So I'll be in the mix with them.
One way or another, right? One time or another. And you're doing some Charlie Parker Centennial things also.
Yeah, that's with Donald Harrison. Donald, he's a really big advocate for Charlie Parker, and he's basically been the main, for me, he's been one of the main sources to really learn the language of bebop, and he's really serious about it because he believes that that's the bed of our existence as artists. If we can begin to understand the concept of bebop, then we can actually start pushing the music forward. But we can't do it without the learning the actual language, the actual heritage. And what better way to do that through Charlie Parker? So he was the first guy that I remember talking about his actual centennial and really wanting to prepare for it. He started preparing us for it like a year and a half, 2 years ago. We're still working on it. So if it can happen, I'm really looking forward to it. But in the meantime, I'm just enjoying learning the music.
Yeah, right. Which can take quite a bit of time.
Yeah, that's a lifetime worth of learning.
Well, Donald has a great story about as a youngster, he had his dad had bought him an alto, and he'd played it around with a little bit, kind of put it away. At some point, he gets it out again. He likes Grover Washington's Mr. Magic.
Yeah, that's right.
And he learns how to play that. He goes and plays it for his dad. His dad said, "That's fine." Now he put on some Charlie Parker, He said,
Yes, right.
go get me some of that.
Yep, that's right.
Always another horizon out there, ain't it, Joe?
Yep.
Well, we have a couple of extra minutes. If you, I know you've got to go at a certain point, but I just wanted to loop back and fill in. You went after finishing at NOCA. You went to Berkeley.
Yes, I had a scholarship to a few different schools, but Berkeley, I was awarded the presidential scholarship, which basically gives you full tuition and full tuition for the school as well as room and board, and for all 4 years. So I was able to get into the program, and I really enjoyed my time there. I met so many, great peers of mine, and met great artists who were coming back and forth throughout the school. And I, was also in the film scoring. I was studying concentrated film scoring, concentration in film scoring at the program, and just learned a lot about writing, learned a lot about some theory, and just got to be around so many great artists. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's always a lot of, and Boston is a place where there's like 1 million students.
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely. The main thing that I learned there was to I think in those type of environments, it's easy to start um, basically becoming, assimilating yourself more into the group, or the, like group thinking, or the masses of what's happening. But because there were so many people there, for me, it also like pushed the idea of like learning how to become more of an individual. And that was like even how you dealt with your teachers and your professors. Most times they give you the agenda for what's going to happen throughout the year, and they give that to all the students, and they basically ask you to follow the guidelines. So what I would do was, because I knew I was also touring with Donald and Dr. Lonnie at the time, I would learn what was the agenda for the class that year or that semester, and then come prepared like throughout the first day and say, hey, I learned that these are the things that you want us to learn. I learned this. Now I have a few questions on what can I gain for myself here, and they were always intrigued by it, and they all had information for me, and they would also point me in the directions that could potentially help me grow. That way, like, you don't just get lost as being okay, student number 3,400.
Right.
So for me, like I said, it just helped becoming more of an individual.
Yeah. So all of these processes have led you to the place where you are now, pushing ahead. Uncertain future for all of us at the moment, but it looks like with all these connections that you've developed to this point in your life and music, that you'll be able to go in almost any direction you want. Are there areas of music that you haven't been able to explore yet that you are looking forward to taking on as time goes by, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, for one, of course, I have the project that I'm leading, the quintet. I'm actually using this time. I mean, the universe has a peculiar way of working. I actually recorded the record, my solo record, in August of 2018, but I've sat on it for some time, because I wanted to take my ears off it and then have fresh ears going back to see how I can mix the project, or what else I can add to it. And I never got around to it because I'm also consistently touring. So now, because I have the time, I've actually started the process of actually mixing the record and editing some stuff, and really it's a freeing process, because now that's being done, I have more ideas that are coming in for more writing, and for different projects to actually come along. So I'm excited for that, like developing more solo artistry, and being able to develop more of a voice as a composer in that regard. And then outside of that, I've always had the idea of learning how to put music to film. That's one of the things I went to school for. So I mean, potentially would like to work on, working with a screen director, or, some type of artistry in that field. And
Yeah.
of course, more teaching and all that type of stuff. I have Jesse McBride likes to call me the reluctant leader. But there's like I feel like there's a natural component to myself that has to do with teaching. A lot of it obviously is being fortunate enough to be around so many great educators in this music, and I want to make sure that I pass that information along as I can.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. It's a very impressive thing to me about so many of the artists, well, all over music, but particularly here in New Orleans, is that dedication to passing it on.
Yes, sir.
And we sure appreciate that as listeners. I'll tell you that, Daddy. You played on a few soundtracks, haven't you? Have you ever written anything for film or television?
Well, I haven't written anything specific. There was my first experiences with being a part of a soundtrack was actually through Donald Harrison. He had a film that he was a part of called Rachel Getting Married.
Oh yeah, great film.
The amazing, late great Jonathan Demme.
Yeah.
And Donald had wrote this beautiful piece called Rachel Loves Sydney. And
right.
I remember we were in college, we were at Berkeley, and Donald had asked us, I need y'all to come into New York for the day and record. And it was like this, mysterious moment, because it was just like, oh, wow, we're going to New York to record, as college students. And, we get in and we laid a track down and luckily got it in one take. So Donald was just like, I got all this time for us to record. And, we got it done in like 5 minutes. So we recorded a bunch of other stuff at the time. Yeah. And that happened to be the track that was used for the film. And then outside of that, there was also the Treme, the hit series Treme. We were able to record for that. A lot of times Donald had us come in to record some tracks that would be a part of it, or we'd actually come on the show and actually perform as ourselves performing for these scenes. So it was, interesting, really great experiences.
Yeah, you got to see a little bit about how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely different from our world. I mean, obviously the level of focus and intention that goes behind it is similar, and in a lot of ways the same. But it was a really great experience. Yeah. Outside of that, there was something else that we recently, The Bridge actually was a part of. That was actually through a friend of ours named John Key, who was one of the musical directors for popular artist Solange. We got an opportunity where they were doing a documentary for what was that, Church's Chicken, and they were saying how they were actually helping the community in I think in Compton in California. So they asked to use some of our material from one of our records, and they spliced it up in different ways, and they was able to use it. So it's like watching the documentary is just like, oh wow, this is like this first beginnings of hearing your sound and how it's attached to film and how it actually can affect someone's emotion while watching something. So hopefully we can do more of it, of course.
Yeah, that is a powerful medium. It is, no question. When you combine music and visual, it can be tremendously moving, or you can take people in a lot of directions.
Absolutely.
Well, you're still working some with the great Dr. Lonnie Smith, right?
Yeah. So the last thing that I did with Doc was last year, December. We went to Florida. He's actually living in Fort Lauderdale at the time, right now. And we went out there, and me and my family, we went out there to hang with him and perform. And I think at the time they had a date coming up in November, actually in August. at the Jazz Standard, and then November he has something else that's coming up in New Jersey somewhere. But nonetheless, I like to. I mean, before all of that, I like to go out and hang with him, and just hang out, listen to music, and play, and just talk about his experiences in his time. And he's a great jokester, so he has he has a lot of ways to make you laugh.
Yeah, he's a very interesting man and a great great artist as well. Well, Joe, thanks so much for taking a minute out to talk with us. Great to see you, Daddy-O, and great to talk to you as well.
It's great to see you too. I hope you guys are faring well with this pandemic.
Yeah. And if all works okay, maybe we see that Joe Dyson record in 2021, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll be one of the first to have it.
All right, Daddy-O. Well, take care and hang in there. Be good and be safe.